Hey guys, it's Evan from Coaster Revolution, and today I'm going to be doing a Kings Island tier list. So let's jump right on into it. On the left we have Super Elite all the way down to Terrible, and these numbers correspond to what I would rank them out of 10. So Super Elite ride is like a perfect ride, 10 out of 10, can't really do much to make it better. And Terrible ride would be something 1 to 3 out of 10. And for it to be terrible for me, it has to be either supposed to be a thrill ride that's really boring, or it's like unbearably rough. So in most cases, I'm not going to find many super elite rides, and there's not going to be many terrible rides. Most of them are going to be somewhere here in the middle. So anyways, let's jump right on into it and rank all of Kings Island's coasters, both past and present. So I'm going to begin by ranking Banshee. Banshee is a great ride. I really love it. It's my favorite B&M invert I've been on so far. I have not ridden Montu yet, but I'm very excited to ride it someday. But anyways, Banshee is a great B&M invert. You know, it does have a little bit of a rattle depending on which seat and train it seems. But I don't think it takes away from the ride, and I think the vest restraints are fine. They don't really bother me because I don't seem to get much airtime on B&M inverts anyways. But because it doesn't have much airtime is why it's only in the great category. You know, it's not my favorite model, but it is a really great ride overall. The inversions are forceful. You know, the inline twist and the loop around the lift hill are awesome. It's just such a good ride overall. Anyways, next ride, let's see, this is Bavarian Beetle here. I have not ridden this. This closed before I was able to ride it. So there's really not much to say about it. It would probably be in the good or meh category because it doesn't look that exciting. You know, it's like, I think it's like a wild mouse, so it's not anything too crazy. Another defunct coaster is Firehawk, and Firehawk I think is a great ride. It's really solid overall, other than its operating and dispatches. Gosh, it was just such a mess. Every time we would go to the park, everyone wanted to ride it, but it had routinely the longest line in the park because it had terrible capacity. You never knew if it was going to be up or down, and dispatches were really slow, so that was really what was holding it back for these Vekoma Flying Dutchman models, unfortunately. But it is a great ride overall. You know, it's very forceful. There's really not much else to say about it. I wish it was, you know, longer, other than the lift hill. The lift hill was extremely long and loud. But yeah, so that's Firehawk. The next one I'm going to rate is Racer, and I think Racer is a good ride, a good 6 or 7 for sure. It's definitely smoother since Gravity Group retracted some of it in 2019, but there are still some potholes for sure, so it's not entirely smooth. And it usually races, which also adds to the experience. So unless you go on a slow day or they're understaffed, they're usually going to have both sides open. So that's really great about Racer. Adventure Express, I was originally going to put it down here in the meh category because it's not that great compared to the other rides at the park, in my opinion. But I didn't realize it was a pretty solid mine train. You know, it's got pretty good theming. You know, it's definitely faster and more thrilling than most other mine train rides. So it's definitely one of the better mine trains I've been on. So I would bump it up to a 6, a low good tier for sure. Like I said, it's got pretty good theming. You know, it's a terrain coaster, which is really cool. And it's always fun to trick your friends going up the last lift hill, you know, telling them it's going to be a really big hill at the end, and then it just pulls you right into the station, which kind of stinks. But other than that, you know, it's an alright ride. It's okay. Screamin' Demon down here, I've never been on that. It was an arrow shuttle loop, so it would launch you off the platform and you'd go into a loop forwards, and then you would come back and do it backwards. This would probably be a really good ride. Probably be in the good category if I had ridden it, but again, I have not. So that's all I have to say about Screamin' Demon. Let's do Backlot Stunt Coaster. I love Backlot. It's a really good ride. Upper good tier, I would say. It's a solid 7 out of 10 family ride. You know, the launch really does pack a punch, honestly. Like, I always get that feeling in your stomach after the launch, and then also the helix after the launch is super intense. Like, I almost always black out on it, and it's kind of hilarious. It always makes me laugh every time I ride it. It is short, but it is definitely sweet, and it's a really good family ride. You know, kids love this ride. The theming is solid, and they also have the special effects usually running as well. Let's do another defunct coaster in King Cobra. This was a Togo stand-up, and if I had ridden it today, it probably wouldn't be very good. because Togo doesn't have a really great reputation here in the States. And also, it's a stand-up coaster, and those really haven't aged well. So I don't think I would enjoy it if it was today, but it was definitely a cool novelty back in the day because it was the first, stand-up, I believe it was the first stand-up model in the U.S. For sure the first stand-up looping coaster, so I'm sure there were a lot of people that liked it back in the day. All right, next one, let's do Diamondback. Diamondback is an elite coaster for sure in my mind. This is an awesome B&M hyper. It's got amazing airtime. It's just floater airtime city. Starting from the first drop, and especially that first Camelback, you've got like 6 or 7 solid seconds of airtime in just about any seat. And it's incredible. Definitely one of B&M's best hypers for sure. Next we have Invertigo, and Invertigo I think is a great ride. This might go against what most people think, but inverted boomerangs are far superior to the traditional boomerangs. I don't care what anyone else says. This is a fun ride. I don't really experience that much headbanging from this. So Kings Island seems to take pretty good care of it. It's also very forceful, which is awesome, but the capacity is really bad. So if you want to get on this and not have to wait a long time, I definitely recommend doing this earlier or doing it when it doesn't have much of a line because the capacity is bad. The dispatches are also really slow. And it's surprisingly a GP magnet. There's a lot of people that ride this, that love this ride and love to ride it. Up next, the Bat, the original Bat. I've never ridden this one before, and it seemed like it was really cool. But it was back in the 80s, and it had a severe engineering flaw that Arrow had. They didn't bank the track, so it caused a lot of stress on the trains and on the track as a result. So it only lasted for a few years and was up and down all the time. So yeah, I never got to ride it, but it would probably be a great ride, I'm sure, if I did get the chance. All right, let's wait for Orion later. Great Pumpkin Coaster. This is meh. It's not too thrilling. It's not that great for a kiddie coaster, but it's not terrible. This is a lot of kids' first roller coasters. It was my first roller coaster, so it's very nostalgic for me. It was really fun, and I loved it as a kid. So I know it definitely doesn't cater to me now, but it's definitely an alright kiddie coaster. Let's do Vortex. Vortex is a great ride in my opinion. Let's see. Let's put it right behind Banshee is where I would set it. So I do like Vortex better than Firehawk, not as good as Banshee. It's significantly worse than Banshee, but it's about on par with Firehawk, maybe a little bit better. And this is because I found a good way to ride Aero Loopers relatively without getting too much headbanging. So it was pretty re-rideable for me, despite it getting pretty rough during the end of its lifespan. And this pulled some awesome forces. There was some great airtime on the first drop. The inversions were really strong, and had a lot of force, positive Gs around the loops especially. And it was just a great layout. And it almost never had a line, so we rode this, multiple times just about every time we visited the park. So I just have a lot of great memories riding Vortex, and I'm so sad that it closed back in 2019. All right, up next, we've got Flying Ace Aerial Chase. That's going to be meh. It's not that exciting for a kiddie or a family coaster. I'm going to put it a little bit ahead of Great Pumpkin Coaster just because it's slightly more thrilling. But these are known as Vekoma hang and bangs for a reason because you hang there and you bang your head a lot. But this one goes pretty slow, so I didn't really experience much of that the last time I've ridden it. But that was years ago, of course. But I remember liking it a lot as a kid, so I'm going to keep it there. Scooby's Ghoster Coaster, that's another one I have not ridden that is defunct. I don't think this was much of a coaster, honestly. It seemed more just like a rail, just like the helicopter ride, that goes on the rails, that only went 5 or 10 miles an hour. So it wouldn't be anything too impressive. Let's see. Woodstock Express is a good ride. This is definitely my favorite of the family or kiddie coasters here at Kings Island. They take really good care of this one. I remember riding this over and over as a kid. It was my favorite roller coaster for the longest time. It's not very rough from what I've heard. I haven't ridden it in a while, but it doesn't seem to be very rough. It used to be called the Beastie and Fairly Odd Coaster before they renamed it to Woodstock Express, but this is a great ride for a kiddie coaster and for parents as well. On to the Bat. The modern Bat I'm going to put this in upper good tier. I'm going to put it right below Backlot Stunt Coaster, which might be a little bit controversial, but I don't think the bad is as exciting as most people think it is. You know, aero suspended coasters aren't my favorite model overall. You know, it just doesn't pull a lot of forces, and I really tend to like airtime, and these models don't really have much of airtime at all. But it is definitely way better than Iron Dragon at Cedar Point, because Iron Dragon is just so slow and boring, whereas the Bat is more of a terrain coaster, so it just continues to pick up speed as it goes further into the layout. So it is a good ride overall. It's pretty short though too, so you probably spend way more time walking to the entrance of the ride than you would on the ride after all. So I usually only ride this if it's a pretty busy day and this is the shortest wait. Moving on, we have Mystic Timbers. We'll do this one next. Mystic Timbers is elite in my opinion. It's just so good. It's one of the best GCIs for sure. It's my favorite GCI I've been on so far. I've only been on like 3 or 4, but it's by far my favorite. I think it has some of the best pacing. It's got some great airtime pops. It's fairly intense. It's an incredible night ride too. Highly recommend a night ride on Mystic Timbers if you get a chance. The shed was kind of disappointing because of the way that they marketed it, but otherwise it's such a good ride, and definitely would recommend a night ride on this. The night ride on this is probably better than the Beast in my opinion. Up next, let's do Son of Beast. Son of Beast is a terrible ride. It was a terrible ride. I rode it the last operating year, so I believe it was 2009. I was like 8 or 9 years old. I was barely tall enough to ride it, and we got off of it, and my head was just spinning because it had, you know, jackhammered so much, and it was so rough. It was intense, don't get me wrong. It was really, it otherwise would have been a really good ride, although it doesn't have hardly any airtime outside from the first drop. But it was just way too rough to enjoy at all, unfortunately. So I rode it after they had taken the loop out, when they were using those lighter trains instead of the heavier PTC trains, so it couldn't get through the loop, which probably was the best part of the ride, but it was just way too rough to enjoy. Now the last 3, let's do Flight of Fear. Flight of Fear, let's see. I'm going to put Flight of Fear right behind, I'll put it in front of, I'll put it behind Vortex. Flight of Fear is a really fun ride. I don't know why it gets so much hate. Like, enthusiasts hate this ride so much, and I don't understand why. You know, I think the darkness enhances the ride because you are even more disoriented than you were before. And there are a few lights on inside usually, so you can still see the head choppers, you know, just as well, so it's still a pretty good effect. Now, the mid-course brake run does kind of kill the pacing, unlike the clones at Six Flags that are outdoors. But honestly, I don't think it, you know, makes it any worse of an experience. Although it does go a little slower through the second half, it gives you some like lateral hang time a little bit, and it feels like you're going to slide out of the car sideways, which, you know, is pretty wild. You don't really get to experience that on many roller coasters. So I do think it's still pretty cool. Onto the Beast. The Beast I would have put down here in the good tier before the retracking because it was getting so rough and it would just jackhammer the crap out of you. But after the retracking, it's definitely way up here. It's a great ride. It's running as good as it's ever been. Gravity Group did a great job reprofiling both of the drops coming off of the lift hills. You actually can get a little bit of airtime in the back on the first drop now because it's not at a just straight 45-degree angle. I believe it's a 53-degree angle now, which is significant if you're in the back. And it's really smooth in the parts that it's been retracked. You know, it's not, you know, going to be butter smooth the whole time because they only retracked probably a third of it. But it is way more re-rideable now. You know, it's just such a good ride. I think why people hate it so much is they go in thinking it's going to have a bunch of forces and airtime, and it doesn't. You know, the Beast is more of a journey through the woods, and you really have to think about it that way if you've never ridden it before. You know, it was really just like a big science project that Kings Island was working on and built in-house back in the 70s, you know, when it opened in 1979. So you really got to think about that and put it in perspective. It's a pretty darn good ride for for what it is, and it's still the longest wooden roller coaster in the world, so I really do love the Beast. I have a special place in my heart for the Beast. And it's also a legendary night ride as well. Mystic Timbers and the Beast, definitely the best 2 night rides in the park. If you have a chance to do that, you definitely should ride them at night. And last but not least, we have Orion, and Orion is an elite coaster in my opinion. And I'm going to put it above Diamondback currently because Orion is like everything that I would like in a coaster. It's got a great first drop, it's got some airtime, it's fast, it's relatively intense. I wish it stayed closer to the ground and wish it was a little bit longer, but other than that, you know, I don't really have much against Orion. And because it's a little bit more intense than Diamondback and the airtime's a little bit more sustained than Mystic Timbers is why I think it's slightly better than both of them. I also think it's a little bit better than Millennium Force, just because, you know, the elements are a little bit more modern, the airtime hits a little bit better, I think the drop's better as well. But overall, Orion is an elite ride, and these top 3 could honestly be switched on any given day. There have been some days in the park where I like Mystic Timbers the best, other days I like Diamondback the best, but overall I think Orion is the best ride at Kings Island. So anyways, thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more roller coaster content coming your way very soon.